right, mayors. I'm really pleased to say that we have our host mayor with us today, and he's ripping and running just like the commissioner, and for him to take a moment and stop by and to welcome us. He's been very engaged and very active in the UF Conference of Mayors. He's got a tough job. We know how tough his job is. So mayors, let's give some extra love to the mayor of New York City, Mayor de Blasio.
Well, thank you so much, and welcome everyone. And before we lose Commissioner Silver, who's got a lot going on, now I have to say nice things about you because you earned them, brother. So first, I love that conversation. I thought it was fascinating, but what I also loved about it is we have a lot of moments in this country that are the stand and be counted moments when we have to figure out where we're going as a country, and sometimes it happens in the work we do, and sometimes it happens in sports or in the private sector. One of those moments was the Sterling controversy. And these two gentlemen teamed up, and I gotta tell you, we've all seen a lot of these things happen. There was a clarity of vision and an honesty and a moral core to what Commissioner Silver did and what Mayor Johnson did and a lot of other people supporting the commissioner that actually showed us what it is to honestly and forthrightly deal with some of the issues we face. And I found it a painful moment, but ultimately a very life-affirming moment. So I think we should thank these two for what they achieved. And one last thing, as he leaves, you all, if you have the All-Star game coming up ahead, it's a great thing. If you don't have it, go get it, because he's kept his word. This extraordinary effort the NBA made in partnership with the city and our agencies and the business community here, nonprofit sector. What is happening, refurbishing gyms and playgrounds, the food drive, so many extraordinary activities and reaching so many of our young people. This has been transcendent. So Commissioner Silver, in our line of work, we occasionally meet people who do not keep their commitments. Mayors, can I get an amen? But you are the real thing. You kept your commitment to New York City is much the better for it, so thank you for what you've done for us, and let's thank you for all you're doing for all our cities. Thank you very much, and of course, Mayor Johnson, you have been, there's a phrase we use in politics and government when someone takes on a leadership position and just keeps driving all the way through energetically, is called a fast break. It's a government term. So that has been the example, the breakneck speed you've brought to your leadership of the Conference of Mayors, and a lot of great stuff has happened on your watch. I want to thank you for that. And I think what we are seeing in the approach a lot of people are taking around the country, and the NBA is a great example, more and more institutions stepping up and responding to some of the real challenges we face, particularly some of the challenges our young people face. And one of the things that I have found really refreshing about my experience still as a young in my mayoralty, but working with all of you, is that truism about mayors, that we are close to the ground, we feel what people are experiencing. This cuts across regional differences or partisan differences. One thing that truly unites us is we feel what's happening on the ground. Our constituents are real to us. We see their faces, we feel their lives. And so as we have talked in some of the meetings over the last year, I have found this great urgency among mayors to address some of the core issues. And this is particularly true of some of the challenges, again, of our young people, but even beyond some of the core challenges of opportunity and the opportunity gap facing this country. I thought we got a powerful imprint from President Obama in the State of the Union, giving us a sense of what it would look like to invest in our country again and actually address the opportunity issues. I thought the President did a great service because it's quite evident to me that his framework in the State of the Union is going to really have a huge impact on the debate in this country this year and next. It's time for a different kind of debate, and I think the President did a lot to help it along. And the kind of debate we need to have would actually take into account what we do every day, would actually take into account what is happening in the economic engines of this country, which are what we all represent. More and more our cities, the economic engines, and yet less and less evident a truly coherent federal policy to support our efforts. I've talked to some mayors from around the world, and when I explained to them that even though we are more central to the economy, while simultaneously dealing with deeper and deeper gaps of opportunity and equality, the natural question all of them ask is, well, of course your national government's going to come in and help you with infrastructure or education or mass transit, right? That's what they do, right? And I've had to explain that hasn't quite been the model as much lately. And our job is to do something transcendent about it, because again, I think the debate is surging in that direction. We have a chance, I think, to provide a very natural leadership in these months to come, because we're living it. We represent the reality on the front line. Now, one of the things I have argued is the mayors of this country have already shown through practical action that we don't need to be stuck. We can do things in a way that actually address our reality. What so many of you have done on early childhood education, what so many of you have done on paid sick leave, what so many of you have done on raising minimum wages or living wages, there are such great examples around this country of what government can do that can actually help to get more and more people in the game economically. A huge challenge now faces us that's a new element of the equation, and it's something that I think all of us are going to care about locally, but the more we can care about it together, the better off we'll be, and that's what's going on with the transportation bill and with the deadline looming in May for federal action or federal inaction. And with the kind support and sponsorship of Mayor Johnson, we started our Cities of Opportunity Task Force last year. I have the honor of having Mayor Walsh of Boston as the co-chair, is doing a great job. And we said, let's go at the core issues where if the federal government were actually working with us, it would make a huge impact on our lives. Let's go at the kind of things that we are all doing that we can knit together and help each other do. And as we started that work, we talked about the things I referenced before. We talked about early child education. We talked about raising wages and benefits. We talked about broadband access. But what a lot of mayors said is all those things matter. We're all working on those fronts, but we really have to talk about transportation, because that's one of the great X factors, and that's where the absence of the federal support is hurting us the most. So I just wanted to make clear that we are going to orient a lot of the work of our task force to the transportation dynamics, to the bill, to the fact that there has to be a push in these next few months to really break through and establish that a new bill has to be passed that will actually support our needs and our initiatives as the economic core of the country. We have a meeting coming up in Boston, so I just want to advertise for that. The Opportunity Task Force is going to meet March 22nd and 23rd in Boston. And I ask you that this is another chance for us to speak with one voice as mayors from around the country on why we need a breakthrough on the transportation bill. Please join us if you can in Boston, or we'll work with you and your staff even if you can't be there in person, because we got to make our voices heard. We've all known for years and years there hasn't been a strong enough sense of urban agenda in Washington. But I also have seen when we band together and focus on a particular issue, it makes a huge impact. And I think on the transportation bill, if ever there's something that should be bipartisan, if ever there's something that should be a great example of local government working with the business community, working with the labor community, everyone having the same need and the same agenda, this should be it. But I think we as mayors are going to have to provide a leadership, because with all due respect to our colleagues in government in Washington, I have noted how often, as we all have, if they are not pushed, they do a great job at paralysis. And we have to tell them this is not one that can allow for paralysis. This is an area where we need a breakthrough, because if we don't get coherence on where we're going on transportation funding, we can't do all that we know how to do to uplift our people and create opportunity. One other point I want to make, so many people got together after the President's executive action on immigration reform. And here was another pressing and urgent matter. The President made the decision on the executive action. It changed the dynamics. Again, this is something you may love it, you may have qualms about it, but any way you slice it, it changed the debate, it changed the dynamics. For a lot of mayors around this country, and I certainly feel this, I know a lot of you do, this was a final recognition of things that had to be addressed that were affecting so many of our constituents, and it was also action that could potentially spark the kind of movement to comprehensive immigration reform. So it had many, many values, many layers, but very practically, It meant there was something new in the equation that was going to affect a lot of our constituents. And I want to thank so many of you and so many who couldn't be here who immediately gathered together in common cause. We had a meeting in December at Gracie Mansion. We had a great team effort to put together an amicus brief to support the Obama administration in the court challenge they're experiencing now. That was truly felt. And I know there's great appreciation at the White House because this executive action is going to have such a tangible impact on so many people in our cities. Again, up to 5 million people around the country affected, overwhelmingly in our cities. And the fact that so many cities stood up and said, we support the administration on this because, one, it's really affecting our people, two, it may finally get us to a bigger long-term solution. That was deeply felt, deeply appreciated, and it marked another example of the power of mayors banding together. We're going to deepen that work. We're looking forward to doing a national day of action around the executive action, supporting it, and making sure that our people can take full advantage of it. So I want to ask your continued efforts on that front because I think they have been both extraordinarily helpful but also historic as an example of what mayors working in common cause could be. And I'll just conclude by saying this. It's clearer and clearer to me, again, what this debate is going to be like in the next, this year and next year. I think it's a debate that's very good for urban America. I think if we're talking about the opportunity gap, if we're talking about the inequality crisis, if we're talking about the need for different policies that actually provide an economic gateway to the middle class for people again, that is a good discussion for cities. It's a good and healthy discussion for the whole country, but it's particularly a good discussion for cities because it then begs the question of what should the federal government role be, what should our state government roles be in actually supporting us again as the people who can make that transcendent impact on the ground through our local governments. It's a good and healthy debate, and it points up, I think, something that people are yearning to hear all over this country. You know, it was very interesting in the previous discussion. More and more what we're seeing is worlds that used to be somewhat separated are coming together. We used to think of public sector, private sector, sports, entertainment. These were all, to some extent, more separated. Now, as Commissioner Silver said, you see more athletes speaking up about the issues of our times. You see more situations where these worlds cross over and we have to address things coherently together. A lot of voices propelling forward a very healthy debate on how we create opportunity again are coming from some places we didn't used to hear them, including from our athletes. I had the honor yesterday as part of this extraordinary weekend of meeting one of my childhood idols, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. A man, okay, here it comes, a man I truly look up to. It was really a challenge for me to have to look up that high, but he is someone who's done such extraordinary things, and he's saying amazing things, and he has a depth of respect all over the country. He said something simple recently. He said, inclusion should be the keynote of American life. That's what all this is about, inclusion, not just social inclusion or cultural inclusion, but economic inclusion. That is what has made this country great, and it can make us even greater if we get it right now. And a lot of people in the NBA are actually helping to lead the way on that, but no one leads the way more than mayors. That is a given. I think it's acknowledged more and more. We are the source of the ultimate and most tangible leadership, and I look forward to doing a lot with everyone here over these next months as we continue to push the opportunity agenda. Thank you so much.
All right, mayors, let's give one more round of applause for Mayor de Blasio. Our organization, bipartisanship and making sure both men and women voices are heard in a real way. So I'm really excited about this next panel. I want to bring up our Vice President of the organization, Stephanie Rawlings Blake, to introduce the moderator and the panel. She has a team, the Baltimore Ravens, the Baltimore Orioles, Morgan State, in a real way. So let's give a round of applause for Mayor Rawlings Blake.
Well, as shameless as I am, you know I already begged the commissioner to consider, you know, I said, should we keep hope alive for the return of NBA in Baltimore? I didn't get that hopeful look that I was looking for. All right, thank you so much, Mr. President. I want to thank all of the mayors. This is a topic that is near and dear to me since Title IX was passed by Congress in 1972. The growth of women's sports and professional women's sports has been astronomical. From Billie Jean King's victory over Bobby Riggs in the Battle of the Sexes to Brandi Chastain's tearing off her jersey in celebration during the 1999 USA World Cup Championship victory. These iconic moments go down as the greatest moments in sports history. We have a terrific panel that is about to come up today, and we are honored that moderating this panel is one of the most recognizable and respected journalists, not only in the country, but in the world. And before I bring him up, I just want to remind the mayors that this is a working lunch session, and there's food in the back, so please, just make your way back there. We don't want us to starve while we're up here. So with that, he is a Peabody and Edward R. Murrow Award winner. He's covered the most important events of our time, and somehow in the midst of all of those things, he has the time to follow sports very closely. Mayors, let's give a warm welcome to CNN's Wolf Blitzer. Sorry, Wolf.
Thank you. That's so nice. Come on up. Ladies. Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. And mayors, thank you very much. Friends, thank you for inviting me here. This is a lot of fun, a lot of excitement. I want to thank Mayor Johnson for putting all of this together, personally calling me, inviting me to come. I always come to the NBA All-Star Weekend because I like basketball. But it's always fun to have these kinds of meetings because you always emerge from a meeting like this one, the Tech Summit yesterday, if you went there, the Newsmaker brunch this morning, you always emerge from these meetings just a little bit smarter than you were when you walked in to those meetings. So we're going to gain some more knowledge now in the course of this discussion. Today we're going to discuss the biggest challenges facing women in sports. And today's panelists will make the economic case for pro-women's sports franchises in cities, your cities, all across the country. When I say our panelists are impressive, that certainly would be an understatement. Sitting beside me are leaders and faces of women in sports today, all of whom have done remarkable things. To my left is the president of the WNBA, Lauren Ritchie. Sitting next to Laurel, I should say, is the former WNBA star, the first woman to ever coach in the NBA, San Antonio Spurs assistant coach, Becky Hammon. Did I say Laurel or Lauren?
Laurel, you got it.
It's Laurel, that's what it is. Also joining us, another NBA alum. She went on to a career in law, is now the Senior Director of Business Affairs at Nike, Sonia Henning. Next to Sonia is an NFL agent representing 9 current players, Kelly Masters. And finally, an NCAA champion, a 2-time WNBA champion, a 3-time Olympic gold medalist. I feel such a loser. One of the greatest women to ever play in the game and still playing, Sue Bird. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for our panel. Laurel, it's certainly been a privilege to watch the WNBA grow over these years. We have a good franchise in Washington, D.C., where I live. But unfortunately, pro sports, by and large, WNBA, not necessarily a huge moneymaker. Why is that?
So I might quibble with you a little bit on that. We just completed our 18th season. Half of our teams are profitable in our 18th season. And I think if you were to go back to the other professional sports leagues and look at where they were in their 18th season, we are actually ahead of the game on that metric. We are still young, we are still growing, but I think our future is incredibly bright. We are in partnership with ESPN last season, and for many years, all of our playoff games have been televised again in our 18th year, and it was 35 years before the NBA's playoffs were broadcast live. So I think the real measure is putting our performance in context of where we are at 18 years versus where other major professional leagues were at 18 years.
So what needs to be done right now to really move this thing along?
Yeah, I think there are two things. I think the first thing is the media. You know, nothing gets under my skin more than when someone will refer to the 4 major sports leagues in this country, and I say, excuse me, there are 5 of them. They just happen to forget the one that is the Women's National Basketball League. So I think first and foremost is the media acknowledging our existence and covering us as they cover the other professional sports leagues. And I think the second thing is there's still a little bit of, in broader culture, a lack of acceptance of female athletes, particularly in team sports. I don't know how many of you watched the Australian Open, but it was interesting that the on-court interviews of Serena Williams, the commentator asked her to twirl, and the commentator would never ask Djokovic or Federer to twirl at the end of winning a match. So I think the culture needs to get a lot more comfortable with the notion of female athletes. My personal view, and I don't have the data for it, but there seems to be an inverse relationship between the amount of clothing or lack thereof that women wear when they compete and the popularity of the sport. We love gymnasts, we love figure skaters, but when it comes to team sports and sports that are viewed as a little bit more competitive, I just think we have a ways to go for people to get comfortable with the notion and having these fabulous athletes coexist as women, as athletes, as lawyers. They're a very multifaceted group, and we just need to sort of appreciate that in them.
Did the person who was asking her to twirl, was that a male or a female?
I believe it was a male.
It was a male, okay. Sue, what needs to be done to really, the same question, move things along right now for the WNBA?
It's a tough question. Really the way I like to look at it in terms of the popularity of the league, where it was, where it's going, and to touch on what Laurel said. The one story I like to tell is recently at the WNBA All-Star Game, a politician from Arizona was speaking, and his story was he was with his son, a young boy, and he said, "Who do you want to be when you grow up?" And he actually said, "Diana Taurasi." And I think that right there is a great story. And I think of my niece, who's only 2, and she sees an NBA game on TV, and she goes, "Aunt Sue, Aunt Sue." 90% of the time, I'm sitting right next to her. But point being, she's going to see basketball for her entire life. Same with this little boy. And they're going to see strong female athletes. And I think it starts there. I think it does. I think what Laurel said was, would they ever ask a male to do that? No. And I think growing up, and you start early with those kids, if you can get the mindset to change on female athletes, what they see when they think of a female athlete, or what they think when they see a female athlete, changing that early is really where it begins. Because I think at this point, some of us, it's almost an unconscious thing.
Did you see that Super Bowl commercial, "Throw Like a Girl"?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I thought it was interesting. And actually, I was at a Super Bowl party with some friends who have kids, and we asked the kids. We were like, "Okay, run like a boy." And the boys ran. And we run like a girl. And it was completely different. And even in that moment, it was a teaching moment. We tried to change what their thoughts were like. And I'm obviously a very good example in my little world of friends of a female who's strong and who's athletic. And I know shortly thereafter, we went in the basketball court, and I had to beat all the little boys in horse, which is fine. I don't mind that. But it does. It changes their outlook on it and their mindset. And I think it really could start there. It's a good place to start anyways.
I agree. All right, Sonia, let's talk. You're an executive at Nike. From a business professional perspective, what needs to be done to promote women athletes more, better, and make sure that maybe the mayors here are listening? What do they need to know? What do they need to do?
Well, it's a great question. I think part of the privilege I have of working at Nike is the fact that Nike, many, many years ago, understood ways to differentiate itself. I mean, you'll see that in our products. You see that in our marketing. And one of the things that certainly is highlighted in a subtle way that unless you're paying close enough attention, you would recognize is the commitment Nike has made historically to promote male and female athletes. So we have hundreds of women, individual athletes signed to endorsement deals. We support thousands of female teams, to Laurel's point and commitment and comment around team sports. So Nike has historically been about the athlete, and the athlete has meant, certainly in this country, male and female individuals, which is great. So the opportunity is there for others, and like I said, it's one of the ways that Nike has differentiated itself and made itself into the leader that we are within our industry, which is fantastic. And in some regards, it's, you know, from a shareholder point of view, I don't want other companies in our industry to get a clue, but I know that eventually they will. And as an athlete, or former athlete, and I will use that word strongly, former athlete, I do want other folks within our industry and some of our competitors to understand the importance of the commitment to not only just their male consumers, but their female consumers, and I think it'll get there. I mean, State Farm is a great example of the commercial that they're doing now. I mean, Chris Paul and Cliff started out, and now we have Sue and her counterpart, which again, to Sue's point, it's about exposure. So when individuals see that ad and they see Sue Bird, they're not going to connect and automatically think, well, of course, there should be a female highlighted as well. And Wolf, to your comment about like a girl, that spot, I thought it was a great spot. I thought there was an opportunity there that may have been missed, and simply that they showed the young girls and doing what they thought people meant by run like a girl, hit like a girl, throw like a girl. And when they then overemphasized the point of at puberty things change and the self-confidence change, I thought it could have been a great juxtaposition at the end of that to show professional female athletes, right? So when they say run like a girl, this is what it means, and showing Allison Felix. Like, how strong of a message is that? Or hit like a girl, Serena Williams. Show a ground stroke of Serena Williams and just the pace she puts on the ball. That message not only goes to young girls, but to Sue's point, to young boys as well. And eventually, those are going to be the leaders in our society. So for all the misses that companies are doing now, those misses will not take place, hopefully, in the generations to come. And then when I think about mayors and being invited, so thank you, Mayor Johnson. And not until we sat down did I realize the athletes here, for those of you that may not have picked up, are all point guards, and it's not just a coincidence. But I do appreciate Mayor Johnson and all of you for the invite to be here and speak a little bit about women in sports. But when I think about mayors and all of what you do, and in many regards, you know, the saying that mayors run the world, it is absolutely true because you touch so many things. There's certain parts of what you're already doing that hopefully you'll continue to do, and that starts, at least in my mind, at the local school levels and with your local school boards. And PE in classes, given all the budget cuts, it's always a struggle of what's going to stay and what's going to go. Having the ability for young kids, young girls especially, because they're not always those that are encouraged by their parents to participate in sports and be active at a young age is critically important. So yes, continue to do that. But also think about, when you're thinking about pro sports, and I was surprised to hear in Mayor Johnson's opening comments how 2/3 of your cities have some level of professional sports league. That's fantastic. I would then ask, well, how many of those are a women's league? And I don't know that I'd get more than 2 or 3 hands raised. Maybe I'm wrong. I'd be happy to be wrong. But when you're thinking about professional sport, that's another level of, it's not just providing opportunities for young kids, K through 12, but giving them an opportunity to see and inspire to do something well beyond K through 12. And that inspiration that comes from athletic teams is something so unique to our society. You can't find it anywhere else. Yeah, you can have more companies come in and economic development and infrastructure, all great things for your city, but are they inspiring like the way a sports team is? And can they inspire across all demographics and certainly all genders? So I would encourage mayors to think about, when you're thinking about your city and the visions that you have, what are you doing to inspire the folks there? And is that inspiration centered around young women and particularly young girls?
At WNBA games, just curious, Laurel, are most of the people who go to these games women?
On the adult level, we skew in arena female, 65-35. On television, it's the opposite of that. But I will say the fan base of the WNBA is the most diverse in all of sports. We have young kids, we have families. Part of that is our price point. Part of it is that it is a league and professional sports played by women, but we bring in families across age, across race, across economic level. We have a very strong LGBT following, so it really is, I think, a microcosm of our country that just happens to be unified in their love of the game of basketball.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure that I was right. Becky, obviously you're a great player in your own right, but now you've really almost become a pioneer in that you've not only gone from working with women, but you're helping men in the process as well. So what are the opportunities for women in men's sports today?
First of all, thank you, Mayor Johnson, for inviting me today. Honored to be here. I think opportunity, there's always been opportunity, and I think it's silly to kind of sit here and say that gender bias doesn't exist in sports. It absolutely does. But I think as you start to see these commercials, and what we're all really talking about at the end of the day is changing perception. And so whether it's a young boy, a young girl, they're growing up in an age where, you know, me and Sue watched, you know, Mayor Johnson over there growing up, Michael Jordan. We had no role models. And I think as things progress and things keep moving forward, I think there's just going to be more and more opportunity for women to step into these leadership roles, because that's what young kids and that, you know, going through puberty or high school or college, that's what they're seeing now. Hey, women can do these things. And for me, I'm a little uncomfortable with Pioneer because there's been so many women that have come before me that have laid groundwork. If there's no WNBA, we're probably not sitting here having this conversation, because it gave me a platform to hone and understand my skill as a basketball player. It allowed me to watch film and be a professional athlete for 16 years, which, I mean, there's no better job than that. I'll say playing is better than coaching, for sure.
How are the women refs in the NBA? Not the WNBA, the NBA.
Well,
how are they being treated by the players?
Well, obviously they had, you know, the Chris Paul thing the other day, and I think this could go on forever. But first of all, I see multiple referees that have been in our league, male and female, that move on to the next league. And the instance with Chris Paul the other day, I don't think it had anything to do with gender. I think it had to do with he disagreed with a call, and he stated his opinion. And Lauren has refereed me. She refereed me this last summer, and I disagreed with her on a call. She didn't tee me up. She probably could have. But, you know, it's tough. I think I don't want to pull that gender card or any of these other cards unless it's applicable, and I don't think it was applicable in that certain situation.
But he did get a fine, what, $50,000?
He got a fine for, you can't do that to referees, so he was probably rightfully fined for, and that would go across the board. If Sue said something terrible about our referees and said it was out publicly,
right,
all of us could get fined for that. So that's normal, that's protocol.
How many women refs in the NBA are there? Do you know?
Two that I know of right now.
And how many you're a coach, how many
Yes.
Women coaches in the NBA are there?
One.
What does that say, though? What does that say? I mean, you are a pioneer, and obviously there's not enough.
Well, I agree.
I speak as a Washington Wizards season ticket holder, and I go to a lot of games at Verizon Center, and sometimes when I'm sitting there, you know, with my daughter or my wife or somebody, and we see a woman ref, they get very excited that there's a woman ref with all these big guys in there who's tough and can handle that. And so it's a source of pride. But unfortunately, you say there's only 2 women refs in the NBA.
Yeah, and I think as we have conversations like this, I think as organizations, you know, for the Spurs to reach out, RC and Pop, and give me this opportunity, I think more people, more management is going to say, hey, this can work, and it's really silly that it hasn't been done already. Like, there's plenty of great female basketball minds out there. This has nothing to do with physicality. This has nothing to do with strength, how well I shoot the ball. This is a mind thing, and there's no reason why a woman shouldn't be in the mix or have a position on many teams. But the NBA has been at the forefront of putting women out there. The union hiring Michelle Roberts on the NBA side. I mean, it's starting to get a little bit momentum, and it should be a welcome change, because I think women have so much to offer in that arena.
Kelly, you represent men. You're an agent.
I do.
And any women?
I have one female Olympian, bobsledder.
All right, so how do you go out there and convince a young man who's a star that you should be his agent?
You know, it's interesting. It's been sort of an evolution. I've been in the business for, this will be my 10th draft. And I recall early on going into meetings, and it's not typically, I'm not just convincing a 22-year-old. There's usually an entourage with him, or at least family members or people of influence that are in his life that I'm also recruiting in a sense. And I recall the early meetings back when it was unheard of for a woman to represent a man, at least in the NFL, and being questioned about my abilities simply because of my gender. And I took offense to that, but I also understood that this is, again, like everyone on this panel has mentioned, this is a shift in mindset. And it's really a perception thing. And it's not about, the fact that there are only 2 female refs or there's only 1 woman coach doesn't speak to ability. It speaks to opportunities. What are young people coming up and looking at and wanting to emulate and become? And I never set out to be a pioneer. I just saw a business that had a need I felt I could fulfill. I felt like there were some things that were broken about the system, and I felt like I was the person to fix some of those, one player at a time and one opportunity at a time. I didn't think about doing it as a woman being something that was going to be trend-setting, but at the same time, yeah, I do remember those early meetings when the looks on the player's face or the family would say, "Can a woman do this?" And it was an education process and educating them about what exactly does an agent do, what is the role, and why am I the best person for it. I didn't see myself as a woman agent. I saw myself as an agent competing, and I think everyone on this panel would agree we're proud of being women and we're proud of our femininity, but at the same time we don't see ourselves as female athletes or female agents or female leaders. We are leaders. We are athletes. We are influencers. Fast forward to 9-10 years down the road, one of the players that I just signed for the 2015 draft, we were on our way to his training site, and he said, I couldn't imagine signing with a male agent. You are the person, you are exactly the right person that I needed to guide me through this process. You care about me, you're a fighter. You're exactly the type of person that I wanted advocating for me. But it's taken 9 years to get to that point where that's a more common thought among NFL players.
It's interesting. I have an agent who represents me, for my television contract. It's a male. But years ago when I was writing books, I had a female who was representing me with the book publishers. And it didn't even enter my mind in those days. She's tough. She's going to be a great, advocate for me. She's going to get me the best contract possible. I didn't even think about, that she's a woman as opposed to a man. But I think in sports, it's probably different, correct?
It is, and largely in football, because most of the young men that I'm interviewing with, that I'm talking to about representing, every influential person in their life, in their football career, has been male. So they're not bringing a woman into the mix, except for there's one voice, usually in a football player's life, that has been a woman, and who would that be? The mom. So a lot of the young men that I meet with now and that I end up representing had very strong women, a lot of times single mothers, that the players look up to, they respect, they know that their mom was there to fight for them. And not that I'm replacing a mother, but I think in their mind they realize, I just need the best person. I just want the best person who's going to fight for me, who's going to care about my life. So yeah, I think in football it's taking a little bit longer for women to fulfill those roles.
Good point. All right, mayors, I'm going to open it up to your questions. Raise your hand. Tell these women who you are, and ask your question into the microphone, please.
Mayor Dennis Williams from Wilmington, Delaware. I just want to commend you ladies. I tell you, I was raised by a strong grandmother and a mother, but I have 3 daughters, and they could beat any kids on the block playing basketball, football, or baseball. And I just want to commend all of you and keep on fighting. And it's up to fathers to make strong women also. Thank you.
Good point. Next mayor. Yes, ma'am.
Kim McMillan, Mayor of Clarksville, Tennessee, home of the famous Pat Head Summit. And I want to tell you that it is people, I believe, like Pat Head Summit, who have changed the role of women's sports. I can assure you that the Lady Vols get more people to come to the games than the men Vols do in Knoxville, Tennessee. And I think that what she did growing up was to try to change that perspective and really try to bring it not just at the professional level, but bring it down to the high school level and the middle school level. And in Tennessee, for many years, we had no middle school basketball, girls basketball, and you didn't even have high school girls basketball. And in fact, she had to move from Cheatham County into Montgomery County, where we are now, just so she could play basketball. So I guess my question to you is what can we do as mayors to really kind of encourage like she did, the role of women in sports, and especially young girls at the lower level in both high school and junior high and middle school.
All right, Laurel, you want to handle that?
Yeah, I would echo what Sonia said earlier. Is I think that we know that when a young girl engages in sports, many risky behaviors go away, right? Lower teen pregnancy, they do better in school, they lead healthier lifestyles. So there's a real immediate need to engage young girls in sports. And I think the other thing we know from a league standpoint is if a young girl engages by the age of 13, it dramatically increases the likelihood that she will be an avid sports fan growing up. So I'll admit I have a vested interest. I care about her as a young girl, and I care about her as a current and potential fan. And that's where I think our work intersects is, while I'm very committed to running a league and making it incredibly successful, I also want to have a positive impact on the communities in which we compete. And that is about getting, when we've got an obesity epidemic in this country, we need young kids to enjoy sports. And if you learn sports early on, then it becomes just what you do and it's fun. And for some, they go on to become the Becky Sues and Sonias of the world. So I think it's just really about making sure we create opportunities within school systems, within extracurricular, whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or the Girl Scouts, or there are lots of community-based organizations that get young girls engaged in sports. And the second thing I would say that's really critical that echoes what Sue was saying is, you know, we're going to share the planet. Last I checked, men and women are going to share this beautiful planet together. And the impact of young girls participating in sports also has an incredible impact on young boys. Because when they sit in a room like this with you guys, and I too am thrilled to be here, we'll see more women here. We'll see men and women as mayors of cities, and we know all the data tells us that when men and women come together to make decisions, the decisions are better decisions because they've been inclusive. So I would say get girls in sports because all the great team building skills, all the self-confidence, all the discipline, so many life skills come from that, and then they fuel that back into our communities, which at the end of the day strengthens all of us.
Good point.
That's great. I just have one more point. I will say that under Pat Head Summit, she had every player that played for her graduated from college, and I will say basically on the honor roll. So that's something I think we can be proud of women, girls, and women in athletics. They also perform on the academic side.
And I am very proud of what happens in all of the male sports leagues, but I am particularly proud that virtually every woman from the U.S. who plays in the WNBA has graduated from a four-year college and is entering our league as a true scholar athlete, and I like to think we're modeling the way on some of that.
Good point.
Thank you very much. I'm Robert Cluck from Arlington, Texas. We have the Dallas Cowboys, we have the Texas Rangers. We're on the hunt for an NBA team, as you know, and hope someday you'll be calling us because we want one. We need to have that in Arlington at University of Texas at Arlington. So
You mean a WNBA team?
yeah, that's what I said, isn't it?
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I said WNBA.
Because I believe you have an NBA team in Dallas.
Yeah, we do. Where? Oh, yeah. I forgot that. But anyway, we're looking forward to receiving a call starting a new team or bringing an old team to Arlington. We're all excited about that.
Well, I would say, you know, as we're a league that is growing and expansion is in our future at some point in time, we know that what makes a successful team is a terrific owner that's really committed, a community that supports the team, a corporate community, and then a fan base. You know, when you started talking about Tennessee, I think that's a pretty nice built-in following. It's kind of the equivalent of UConn, but I hope we'll be having conversations with many of you in the future about bringing a W team to your market.
Be a great idea. Mayor, anybody else? Yes.
Yeah, so just to follow up on that question, I'm Christopher Kamal, the mayor of West Sacramento, and it was one of our great losses was the Monarchs, which, as you said, the success of even the Monarchs in our market was much stronger than virtually any other sport that we started. I think I've seen 3 USFL, CBL, football franchises fail in our market, many other sports, and so although the Monarchs didn't make it all the way through, there wasn't something distinctive about the WNBA team. But ever since, and actually as the team was making its own decisions, our own reflection as a community, like what else could or should we have done, in addition to the sort of the support, the moral message, which wasn't a great way to get people into the seats, right? Because people would say, "Oh yes, I support the concept, and it should be happening, and it's wonderful for society, but we need them to buy some tickets, buy some suites, buy some advertising." What do you have you seen particular cities and mayors that have been effective in their stadium, just getting really granular in like the nature of their stadium deals or their financing arrangements or their expectations of their corporate partners that are getting development subsidies? Have you seen some very specific strategies that mayors have or might employ in their communities, either in the WNBA or in some of your sister leagues, that might be helpful in driving the market for the WNBA?
I think we've learned a lot. I'm entering into my 5th season at the WNBA, and one of the things I have come to realize is there's sort of been this pendulum swing between are we a cause or are we a sports league? And I firmly believe that we're a sports league. And the people who come into the arena have got to come in because they want to see the very best women's basketball players in the world compete. Now, because it is a game that is played by women, there is a whole ripple effect of the impact of that on young girls and on young boys and on the communities in which we compete. But first and foremost, we have got to be and stand proud of ourselves as sports entertainment. So I think that's one piece. We've sort of stopped that pendulum swing and we've sort of put a stake in the ground. I think the second thing is there is sort of a sense a little bit in the world of sports that early on you're just not going to make money, that it's sort of a labor of love for very wealthy owners who it's kind of the hobby that they've got. And I've sort of said, no, actually, my expectation is every team will make money. So all of our teams are, if they are not profitable, they are on a path to profitability. And in 4 years, we've gone from 1 team to 5 or 6 that are profitable. And that's just, I think part of that is the intent to say, no, this is important. We are a business, and if we're going to succeed and thrive, we need to be profitable. So I think bringing more discipline to that has been critical. And then I think the third thing is really celebrating our athletes. At the end of the day, people don't follow a league. They might follow a team, but they fall in love with Becky Hammon, or they fall in love with Sue Bird and her story. And we as a league, in partnership with the media, need to do a better job of telling these stories. So Sacramento was a terrific market, and I will say, I have probably quarterly get a call from Mayor Johnson asking and inquiring of, are we ready, is it coming? So I think we're hoping to learn these lessons so that when we enter new markets or return to markets, we do so with greater knowledge and understanding.
All right, we're going to go down, starting with Sue, and we're going to give a final thought that I want you all of it to think about. What do you want these individuals, the mayors and other friends who are here, to leave moving forward on this really important subject of women in sports today? What's the most important thing you hope that they will all emerge with? Maybe they weren't focusing in on it when they came in.
2 things. One, real quick, is that in my time playing professional basketball, and I wanted to chime in, but I didn't have a chance. There's something about women's basketball that, there's one thing, I'm not a big hockey fan. I'll just be honest. I don't really like hockey that much, but when it comes up in conversation, I don't feel the need to bring it down and trash it and say bad things. I just say, I don't really watch it. There's something about women's basketball specifically that people feel the need to, it's okay not to like it, but why do you have to put it down? I'm not talking about the people in this room necessarily, but I'm just saying in general. over my experience and my conversations, there's this need to put it down. And I think that comes from the stigma, something we all touched upon. I don't know where it begins, if it's the grassroots or what, but I think that really needs to change, and it definitely needs to be a focus. And the second would just be female athletes. I understand that we might not be as big or as strong as our male counterparts. And I don't know why people compare us, because we're not them, they're not us. But we have strengths, and you have to keep that in mind. And our strengths, they might not look the same visibly, but they're there. And like Becky said, when it comes to a coach, it's your mind. And there's no difference there. So just to always remember those two things.
Good point.
I would simply say each of you are leaders. You are on the ground. You are dealing with communities, the education process, and from young people all the way up. And you have such an incredible opportunity in your hands to inspire and impact your constituents. And I would say continuing to highlight opportunities for both men and women, for young women, to take on challenges, to take on leadership roles. That was something that, getting into my specific profession, I really didn't have someone to emulate. And now on a daily basis, I get emails from young women wanting to do what I do. And I think making your constituents aware of amazing opportunities, highlighting the accomplishments of individuals like the women on this stage, really inspire, like as has been said today, not just young women, but boys as well. People in your community need role models. They need inspiration, and they need to know even more so how to treat each other and how to honor each other. Whether men, women, sports, leadership. We do need to have opportunities to honor and inspire and encourage one another.
I'd add to that, and to Laurel's point about 18 years with the WNBA. In many respects, women in sports, whether it's professional sports or just sports activity levels, are trending in an upward way. And so an opportunity to differentiate your city, your county, is to make sure that as you think about ways to inspire, as you're thinking about ways to innovate, as you're thinking about things that can be game changers for you and your local area, absolutely keep the focus on what is trending. And women in sports is trending, and a generation from now, they're going to look back and say, why were you guys talking about women in sports? Because it's a given. So you can decide how and where on that spectrum you want to be, and I'm confident, given that this is a leadership conference of mayors, that you all do want to differentiate and always be on that edge of the forward thinkers rather than those that are catching up.
For me, I think the biggest thing when we're talking about sports is, in the history of our country, it's probably been the greatest unifier of people. And whether it has been racial or gender or anything, let's just continue that upward coming together and moving forward, bringing people from all different walks of life. I mean, me and Sue have, and did you ever play overseas? Okay, well, we've traveled the world. Me and Sue have been in Moscow at the same time, like many, many nights. And you just hear and meet so many different people. And at the end of the day, it's about the people. And so you guys have a hands-on, direct link to your communities. And I think just to continue to get people involved and get people excited, because it's good for your daughters and it's good for your sons too. And so keep that unity piece moving forward.
Wow. I would just echo all that the four have said, and I guess the only other thought I would love to leave you with is the notion of different but not less than, which is another theme for us at the WNBA. Is I get that we're different than the NBA, but in being different, I do not feel like we're any less than, and I think it's something I've learned at the WNBA, but it's become sort of a metaphor for any time I'm engaging with someone or some group that is different than I am, to sort of just give them their space to be who they are. And as we grow, I'm hoping that I'm sitting across the table from all of you talking about the possibility of owning and hosting the next WNBA franchise. And thank you for having us.
I think these terrific panelists, a terrific conversation. I'll leave you with one final thought that I have about women in sports broadcasting, which is a little different than women in sports. Women in sports broadcasting, subject I know a little bit about. When I was a very young reporter, one of the first jobs I got was working for the Reuters news agency, which is a wire service, and they sent me out to cover sports. you know what? It is so hard. You have to be precise. You have to be perfect. You can't say the score was this when it was really that. You have to know about all these players. You have to know about all their records. You have to know all this stuff. And it quickly dawned on me, I'm not capable of being a sports reporter. I just don't have all that knowledge. You need a tremendous amount of knowledge in order to do it. And so when I see sports writers, sports broadcasters do this, I am so, so impressed. And especially, we have a woman sports anchor, reporter at CNN, Rachel Nichols. You've probably seen her on. She is amazing. She really I mean, I thought I know sports, and I'm a sports fan, but she knows everything, and not just about baseball or basketball, but every sport, and she is so, so good. So let me put in a plug not only for women in sports, but women in sports broadcasting, sports reporting, sports journalists. They still have a long way to go. Unfortunately, there's been some problems over the years. We'll get into that maybe on another occasion, but I'm really proud of all of them. I'm especially proud of the women here today, so let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you, Mayor Johnson. Thank you for inviting us, U.S. Conference of Mayors.
All right, mayors, round of applause for our panelists. And Wolf.